Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I call to order the FORA Reuse Authority Board of Directors regular meetings Friday, October 11th, about 2 o'clock. We'll soon be going into closed session with regard to conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, Government Code 54956.9 Alpha, 7 cases. Keep Florida Wild versus Florida Reuse Authority, case numbers M114961, M116438, M119217. Second, Bogan versus Houlimard, case number M122980. Third, City of Seaside versus Valenzuela, case number M124499. Fourth, Florida Access Alliance versus Houlimard, case number M124709. And fifth, the City of Marina versus Florida Reuse Authority, case number M118566. Prior to going into closed session, does any member of the public wish to address the board on any of these items we'll be discussing in closed session? Seeing none, open the public comment period's closed. We are now adjourning in closed session. We'll be reopening in open session right next door. Thank you. We'll be back as soon as we possibly can. Okay, I call the meeting back to order. We're now in open session. If Mr. John Giffen would please announce the action taken in closed session, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The board met with counsel in closed session, heard from counsel on each of the matters that are listed under item 2 of the agenda. There is one matter to report. The board did give approval for the resolution of Keep Fort Ord Wild versus Fort Ord Reuse Authority, case number M116438. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, John. I'd ask Mr. Sid Williams, a former member of 10 Special Forces Group, a veteran and a key member in raising funds for the Veteran Cemetery, if he'd please do us the honor of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Mr. Williams. If we could have a roll call, please.
City of Carmel by the Sea, Councilmember Beach. City of Delray Oaks, Mayor Edelin.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell. Here. City of Marina, Councilmember Morton. Here. City of Monterey, Councilmember Selfridge. Monterey County, Supervisor Potter. Monterey County Supervisor Salinas.
Here.
Monterey County Supervisor Parker. Here. City of Pacific Grove, Councilmember Cohen. Here. City of Salinas, Mayor Gunter.
Here.
City of Sand City, Mayor Pendergrass. Here. City of Seaside, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. Here. City of Seaside, Councilmember Edwards. Here. 20th Congressional District, Alec Arago. 17th State Senate District, Nicole Charles. Here. 29th State Assembly District, Erica Parker. Here. University of California, Graham Bice. California State University, Andre Lewis. Monterey Peninsula College, Walter Tribley. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, Dan Albert Jr. Monterey Salinas Transit, Hunter Harvath. Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Debbie Hale. United States Army, Colonel Fellinger. Fort Ord BRAC Office, Bill Collins. Marina Coast Water District, Director Moore. Chair Edelin, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Lena. We have a number of announcements today. First of all, Colonel Fellinger is not able to be with us because of the government shutdown. He's basically not allowed to. You're doing it out of the goodness of your heart, however. So he will be here as soon as he can once the government shut down and the government's working normally. If it ever works normally, he'll be back. Mr. Bill Collins of the BRAC office has an announcement for us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you know, this is our burn season. The weather is looking very favorable for the early parts of next week. We're currently monitoring the weather, and we're hopeful we're going to meet prescription. So once the decision's been made to mobilize, there'll be a press release, and many of you will be getting phone calls as part of the notification process.
Thank you. Next, we have the program Reuse Advisory Committee has been meeting about every 2 weeks for 2 hours or so each time, working very hard for the colloquium that's coming up. Looks like a great program, 2-day program that's coming up, and We've got Mr. Andre Lewis, who will be tell us a little bit about the colloquium. Andre?
Is on? Okay. The dates for the colloquium, I think we've discussed it before, but they've been confirmed now for the 12th and 13th of December. That's a Thursday and a Friday. And we're going to follow the Friday session, which I think is going to end at around 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. We're still kind of finalizing the schedule for both days. But on Friday, we want to follow it by a FORA meeting, most likely. So again, the whole idea for the colloquium came out of President Ochoa's idea of making Cal State Monterey Bay, really part of the community, and making it kind of a place where, anybody from the community can come and have a forum, exchange ideas, and just in keeping with the university as using his words, as a steward of place. And so this is something he's been thinking about for a while, I think ever since he's been exposed to the FORA process. And so we're thinking that this is going to be a nice time to kind of get all the members, the public, kind of out of this building into kind of a new place. The idea is to bring as many experts from across the country who have experienced a base closure before, who have worked on economic development, who have worked on creating innovative clusters of new businesses. That's why I'm happy that, UC Invest and Graham, that you're going to be kind of working closely with us on this, because that's kind of ground zero for where the clusters that would really create some of the jobs that this community has been asking for, can be placed. We're going to invite the public. We're going to be sending out an email, kind of save the date, over the next week or so. And then we're going to follow that up with some hard invitations. We've got a little budget that was passed by you all at the last meeting, where we'll advertise this, possibly even have some signage and some pamphlets, and really try to get as much of the community involved in this as possible. Both days we plan on having a luncheon, and the idea right now is that we could have an expert at every table. And so it would be kind of lunch with the expert of your choice, whether it's on blight removal or economic development or the National Monument. So we want to kind of balance some of the ideas that have been discussed at this board, on this board over the years, of how do you develop the base in a way in which you're preserving nature as we move forward. And it's going to be, kind of a hard nut to crack, but that's what the purpose of this colloquium is for, is to really kind of bring in a lot of people who have had bad experiences with it and good experiences with it. And so hopefully we can all in this region kind of learn from what others have done across the country.
Thank you, Andre, and thanks to Dr. Ochoa for all the work. The CSUMB president and Mr. Lewis have been team players with a PRAC and doing a lot of work, a lot of yeoman's work in doing this. It should be an outstanding opportunity. Did you mention the two social functions as part of this activity itself? With libation included?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
sure.
yeah.
We're going to need that.
So if you show up, you might get a glass of wine also. So that's another incentive. Not only you learn something, but you'll enjoy being in a social function with the rest of us here. So.
And Eduardo would have been here, but he's at the investiture of the president of the Maritime Academy up in Vallejo.
Okay, outstanding.
Mr. Chair, if it just might, yes. Despite those inducements, but I don't want you to have your feelings hurt when there's no member of the Board of Supervisors present on the 12th, because that is the day of our strategic planning retreat with the department heads. So it won't matter, but we won't be there anyway.
There's more for the rest of us. Okay, another announcement.
Chair, can I just
yes, go ahead.
follow up with
Yeah.
that? The public's invited. Obviously, the FORA board is very important for all of us to be there, but also each of our jurisdictions, the planning departments in our jurisdictions, the people that are making decisions, trying to implement what happens on this land, is very important that they also participate, and they are invited and urged to attend. So I'll be back at the City Marina trying to get a roll call of everybody there, with wine or without.
There was also a comment made at the last PrAC meeting that the number of speakers we have and the horsepower with regard to the speakers themselves is such that this could be one of the most central type of activities of its type in the entire nation. So we'll all learn a lot from all areas of the spectrum as far as trying to redevelop Fort Ord. So, okay, another announcement. Our next meeting.
Chair,
Yes.
through the chair.
Yes,
I
Ian.
guess just an informal question.
Sure.
Is this going to be televised or recorded?
We will
for
record it, and it will be on our website afterwards. So if the supervisors have an opportunity to sit in the comfort of their own homes with their own wine and enjoy exactly what's going on. Okay, our meeting, our board meeting next month will have to be changed due to the investiture of Dr. Eduardo Ochoa. A lot of us will be going there. We're moving the FORA board meeting to November 8th. Same time, so just mark your calendars. You don't want to miss our next meeting. It should be as exciting as they always are. Mr. Hulamart has two announcements right now.
Yes, Chair Edelin, first, the United States Department of Defense and the Department of Veterans Affairs, we're working with Congressman Farr's office, and he asked me if we would make sure to let everyone know that they currently are scheduling a groundbreaking ceremony for the William Gorley Clinic. That'll be on 11/11 at 11. And for those of you that don't know what day that is, you're in a lot of trouble. Right. But 11/11/11, it'll be just adjacent to the clinic site. Actually, I think they're lining it up to be on the site that will, the future theater site in the city of Marina. Item number 2, Chair, is an update on the Central Coast Veterans Cemetery. This board had a special meeting last week that authorized us to proceed forward with grant application, grant acceptance, pending approvals of other funding from the state of California for the cemetery. I think Nicole Charles has a comment about the funding from the folks in the state of California, but I first want to note that all of the required documentation for that, which are 19 different documentary pieces that we have to put together in the course of 1 week, were all done on time. The escrow's open. Funds are being deposited by wire or check or whatever means. And by next Tuesday, we are absolutely certain that on the local side, all of those funds will be good funds in escrow, and the state of California said for the $614,000 required at the local level, they're willing to accept that in escrow as being sufficient for being available to the endowment account. And so I know Nicole has a comment about the state funding.
Thank you, Michael. Good work. Okay, next on the agenda
Wait,
is the...
can I make a comment?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Nicole.
I'm sure you all have read the newspaper and heard the news right by now, but Senate Bill 232, authored by Senator Monning and co-authored by Assemblymember Stone, that would appropriate $1 million towards the Veteran Cemetery, was signed by the governor yesterday. So we're very excited and happy. Thank you. Oh, I wish the senator was here to hear that. But, and can't thank the community enough for the support, for the letters of support, and FORA for also helping to orchestrate the local funding effort as well. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board members? Again, tell the senator we really appreciate all the work he's done. Without his work, we would not be where we are today. We'd probably be back in square one, so it really means an awful lot to all of us. Any other announcements from Erica? Okay. Okay, next is the consent agenda, approval of the September 13th board meeting minutes. Any member of the board wishing to pull the minutes for questions or discussion? Seeing none, any member of the public wishing to pull any the minutes for questions or discussion? Okay, entertain a motion from the board.
Second.
Okay, Mayor Gunter, the motion maker, and the second was Councilmember Gil Morton. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have new business, the Marina Coast Water District Financial Plan and Rate and Fee Study. Mr. Steve Ensley will give us a presentation.
Actually, members of the board, I will just give you a brief overview, and the presentation will be given by Marina Coast Water District and their consultant. Each year, the FORA board, under our facilities agreement with the Marina Coast Water District, is required to take a action on the rates and fees, otherwise known as the budget for the Marina Coast Water District. That item will be brought forward to this board. The plan is for next month, but in part, that document will be based on a rate study that the district has undertaken every 5 years. They do a rate study, and they are currently at that point. And that rate study is being analyzed by your Water Wastewater Oversight Committee along with the budget document itself. And it was thought by that group that the board would benefit from essentially an informational item regarding the rate study itself that the budget document will be based on. So that is the context for why we're doing this this afternoon. FORA staff, of course, would be available for any FORA-related questions afterwards, but we do have, as I said, MCWD staff and consultants to answer your questions about the rate study document itself. So Brian Lee, the general manager, will start off.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having us here today. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present our rate study. This rate study is kind of near and dear to me because my very first meeting at Marina Coast Water District on my very first day was the kickoff meeting for this rate study back in February. So this is a very important rate study for me personally because it's the first product under my tenure at the district. So thank you very much. I hope it's well received. The district, Marina Coast Water District Board approved this rate study a number of weeks ago. I think it was late August. And we have been working with the Water Wastewater Oversight Committee and FORA staff for a number of weeks afterwards, making sure that they are as understanding of the rate study as they can possibly be. And today is the first official opportunity to provide you an opportunity to look at that rate study. And I encourage you to have you or your staff contact myself or Kelly Cadiente, who is in the audience today. She is our financial officer for the Marina Coast Water District. And if you have any questions at all, please get them to us before next month's FORA meeting when we do plan on presenting our budget for next year. So with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Pierce Rosum from Corollo Engineering. They are the consulting firm that performed this rate study, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Pierce Rawson with Corollo Engineers. As Brian just mentioned, we started this project in February, and we were brought on to do a revenue, financial plan, and rate study. And just have a few slides. I know there's going to be some questions in the background, but just wanted to give a brief overview of the process behind this financial plan and rate study. So starting with the process, the main study objectives are basically to take the existing budget or the forecasted budget going forward and determine revenues or rates that are sufficient to cover those planned expenditures. With those expenditures, we look at what are the legal requirements. The primary legal mandate is Proposition 218, which just says the rates have to be defined by a cost of service, that they can't be more than the cost of service or the cost of providing that service to the consumer. There's also some other regulations, SB 7-7, otherwise known as 20 by 2020. This is a conservation mandate, so it's encouraging 20% conservation by the year 2020. These are the general overviews or the objectives that we've went into the kickoff meeting with. The cost of service study generally has three primary analyses. First is the revenue requirements, the second is the cost of service component, and then final, the rate design. So the revenue requirements analysis really just compares the revenues to the operating and capital costs to determine the adequacy of existing rates. If the rate revenue isn't sufficient to meet those operating expenditures or those capital costs, then those revenues need to be increased. So that's the main thing. So when the district brings its budget to you, just please keep in mind that that budget was the primary or the foundation of this analysis. The second piece of this is we have the budget, but how does that mean, how are those costs incurred and how do those revenues get collected by the ratepayer? So what we do is we allocate the revenue requirements to the various customer classes and try to allocate it based on a fixed component and a variable component. So when you look at your water bill or your sewer bill, what you'll notice is there's generally a fixed component or a commodity charge, which is based on the amount of water you consume. The cost of service analysis helps break out the split between the fixed charges and the variable charges. The rate design helps, considers the actual structure. How are those revenues coming in? Now that we've adequately split the cost between different components, how do we generate that revenue in a fair and equitable manner? One way of doing it is saying everyone just pays, here's a pie, split it evenly and everyone pays that share. But of course, the more water you use, that changes the amount of revenue you want. So there are different rate designs that can generate certain revenues. Beyond those, standard practices, those standard procedures, there's a lot of critical and competing objectives. And so this is where the policy comes into play for the most part, that you try to provide cost of service. You need to define a fair and equitable manner of allocating those costs. You need to consider affordability, but at the same time you need to consider the district is trying to recover their costs, provide a future service, an existing benefit. Capital funding is one of these big issues where you're trying to balance the short-term needs, the long-term needs, and having sufficient revenues on hand in order to be more proactive rather than a reactive capital situation. A very good example of this is for the past 2 years, the board has implemented increases that are lower than the proposed adjustments. So what we do here is we looked at 2010 and 11. That's our kind of a baseline, roughly $5 million worth of revenue, and this is specifically looking at the ORD cost centers. So this example is for water. In 2011-12, the recommended increase was 7.8%. The board adopted a 4.9% increase. In 2012 and 13, again, there was a 7.8% revenue adjustment, and no increase was provided. What we see here is looking at 2013-14, the revenue requirements analysis says there needs to be a 10% revenue increase in order to cover the planned budget and capital expenditures. If those previous rate increases were implemented, it would actually generate more revenue. With no increase this year, would generate more revenue than what we're projecting now. So this is just an example of, while we try to balance affordability, we are kicking the can down the road and trying to fund capital improvements. So just looking at it, the delta between the 2012, 2013, so the current year, is 10.2%. The future recommendation for the rates is a 10% increase, and that was what was noticed to the public. One of the primary drivers of the revenue increase is capital improvements. There's roughly $20 million worth of capital improvements over the next 5 years for ORD water. and a slightly smaller amount for Ord Sewer. And these are proposed capital plans that were developed by the district and are funded by this revenue program. Now, the impact to the customer will vary depending on how much they consume. But looking at this, just going to spend a couple minutes on this slide. We're looking at both the water and the wastewater, or the sewer. Water has two bill components. It has a service charge, which regardless of the amount of water that you consume, you're always going to pay that amount. So that's that dark blue bar. Then the consumption charge is your variable rate or your commodity rate that varies based on the amount of consumption that you have. What we have up on the screen is typical 13 units of consumption, which is the average for the Ord district. The final piece is sewer, and that is a fixed charge. It doesn't vary by the amount of water consumption. So if we transpose that onto the proposed rates, we see an increase. You'll notice that the increase really is primarily from the service charge increasing. That's that fixed component. And the reason for that is just during the cost of service analysis, the district isn't generating sufficient revenues to cover their fixed portion of their costs. A majority of their costs are fixed. Salaries, benefits, the operationals of of their facilities. A lot of those costs are fixed and they do not vary with the amount of consumption. So what this tries to do is realign those a little bit better to have the fixed costs recover more of the fixed expenditure. This will provide more financial stability for the agency. This slide, there's a lot to take in, but it's a pretty simple slide, and so just going to break it down. The top component, as I mentioned, there are two components to the water charge. The top component that you see here is the commodity rate or consumption charge. And just like it is today, it has three tiers. The tiers have not changed, and they just continue to be 0 to 8, 9 to 16, and then 16 plus. And those are the existing and the proposed for the next 5 years. The other charge that I mentioned is that fixed charge, that monthly service charge, and you see those, and those vary by the meter size, which is to the left. And then finally at the bottom there you have your fixed sewer charge, which is an EDU charge, but typically most single-family accounts only have one EDU, so that would be the rate that they would see. Changing gears, not only are we looking at the monthly charges, monthly revenues, but we also are looking at the capital charges or the capacity charges related to infrastructure. And so the capacity charge are those one-time payments that a new developer or a new development pays into the system to pay for the portion of the existing system and then pay for the future capital necessary to provide service to that unit. So this is just a simple methodology of how that is, those different components. The capacity charge is made up of the existing system. And what we did is we took the replacement cost, net, or less new, replacement cost, new, less depreciation. So what we did is we took the system, increased it to what it would take to replace the system in its entirety today, and then took away the full depreciation that's occurred since it was in the ground. So basically taking up to today's cost. Then we look at the present value of the future capital. So we're not looking at, a $5 million system that's going in 5 years down the road and inflating it. Everything's in today's costs. And then we're taking the cost of the entire system, existing and future, and dividing it by the existing and future customers. Within each of those components, this is the basic methodology, and in the presentation packet, this is after the last slide. The details of all these are provided in the last slide. But what we have is the current asset value, which is, as I mentioned, escalated asset replacement value applicable reserves and other assets. So as a new user comes into the system, they're buying into those reserves. They're buying, we take out depreciation, we take out debt principal, and then we increase, and then we add in the future CIP, that present value, and this is the total CIP going forward. And as I mentioned, we divide that basis over the population estimates. Based on that methodology, here are the existing methodology, or existing capacity charges and the proposed. It is a large jump, but I will say that the existing charges also, as a new user currently comes into the system, they pay a capital surcharge. And so you're basically doing kind of a down payment. Under the existing system, you're putting like a down payment, and then you're paying monthly to backfill that capital charge. What we're doing here, what we're proposing is saying, let's simplify the process. Let's not have a user come in and increase their monthly charge, but have them come in and pay one time and one time only. And this, so that would be a one-time charge, and there would be no capital surcharge or no monthly capital surcharge for either water or sewer for new users. With that, I will take questions.
Any questions by members of the board? Yes, Jane?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think, one of my concerns always is existing users bearing a sort of an undue burden for the costs of creating the infrastructure for new users. And to a certain extent, some of the existing users have already been carrying some of those costs for 10, 15 years or more. Am I correct in understanding that that while you have some, and I think I'm correct in reading that there's some pretty hefty increases to existing users. Looks like it's the Ord water goes up 10% a year for a number of years, and Marina sewer does the same thing, and then Marina water goes up 3% a year, and Ord sewer goes up 4% a year. So there are already some pretty hefty charges here for the existing users. But do I understand your description of the capacity charge as being a way for the new users as they come online to help pay for some of the sort of the fixed costs and the costs of building essentially their infrastructure?
Yes, thank you. So that's a very good question. Thank you. You're right. There are increases for the monthly rates, so the commodity charges. But what we've done is we've separated out growth from non-growth. So growth pays for growth under this situation, and then existing users or new connections as they come in and start paying a monthly rate will pay for existing capital and a replacement of those existing capital. So there's no subsidization of one user or another. Everyone's paying their fair share.
Other questions by board members?
We have received a number of questions prior to the meeting today, and I have an opportunity. I'd like to walk through those questions to help the board kind of guide them through this discussion, if that's okay.
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. We received some questions, and I'm going to walk through them. Pierce has already provided me answers, so I'm going to kind of play a tag team with him. I'll ask the question and have Pierce respond. So the first one was, why did we exclude the FORA funding contributions?
Get the microphone up a little bit, please.
Sorry. Why did we exclude the FORA funding contributions? As I understand it right now, FORA has offered and agreed to fund the district approximately $40 million for capital improvements. And the district and FORA both recognize those. However, there's no real mechanism yet in terms of FORA handing those contributions over to the district. So the district purposefully excluded those from this rate study until we actually have some sort of mechanism, some agreement with FORA that shows how those funds will be distributed to the district. We wanted to take a worst case scenario, basically. And then, so the follow-up question is then, when FORA funding is collected, how will the overpayment of fees be reimbursed or credited? Basically, I was talking with Kelly Caliente, and she said that we would credit that to the capital program. Looking for some verification.
Good afternoon, Board. Quite a bit shorter. The contribution that FORA would provide, once we have a mechanism for actually receiving it, when a new development came in and had to pay our capacity fees, we would have the total cost and then less a credit for whatever was going to be subsidized by the FORA contribution, and they would pay a net capacity fee. So that's how we would implement that. But we wanted to know what the total cost to buy in would be, and then have the fee paid net whatever contribution was received.
The second question was touched upon by Supervisor Parker, which is why are the Ord Community Water and Sewer capital surcharges being eliminated and being passed through to capacity charges? Why the significant change from the 2008 approach? I'm going to let Pierce add anything.
Right, so thank you. As I mentioned, the capital surcharges were removed under the proposed methodology because as a new user connects to the system, they'd be paying that full cost up front rather than a one-time fee and then a monthly surcharge. So at the end of the day, the increase is not as substantial as that graphic would allude to.
I may have him pick up the rest of the questions too, so we don't tag team. But the third question was, since new development is a more water efficient than existing housing stock, how is this recognized in the proposed rate and capacity fee update?
Yes, so a capacity charge as it's defined is a equivalent dwelling unit. And the equivalent dwelling unit is based on a meter capacity. So what we've done is we took a look at a 3/4 inch meter, so a typical single family connection, and what is the flow contribution that that meter pulls through the system. So what is the maximum demand of that meter? And so looking at efficiency of the faucets, that's going to come in on your monthly charge. But in essence, that system demand of that meter is the same whether you have efficient fixtures or not efficient fixtures. So the actual connection, the actual service that's being provided to that meter is the same to a new construction versus an old construction. So we're basing it off of a meter capacity ratio, not off of a usage-based equivalency. One question was, the fourth question was, what is the basis for the land assumptions in Appendix D? Appendix D of the report. And if we look at Appendix D of the report, the land-based assumptions are simply taking the urban water management plan growth assumptions, which go out to, I believe, 2030, and we've calculated the amount of water, or the amount of growth per capita that would provide, and so we backed into the growth. So what we've done is we just took the water projections in the urban water management plan that were updated in 2010 and used that as a growth formula for land-based assumptions. Number 5 is, what is the basis for allocating outstanding bond debt? This is a multi-part question, so I'm going to answer that first part now. Debt was allocated to each cost center. So Marina Coast Water District has 4 cost centers, Marina Water, Marina Sewer, Ord Water, Ord Sewer. Each of these cost centers incurred debt based on the facilities that debt paid for. So the debt was allocated specifically of how, what projects they paid for, and so each cost center is paying their own debt, if that makes sense. The second part of that question is, why is debt coverage paid by ratepayers higher than is required by the debt covenant? This gets a little technical, but as you issue debt, your bondholders require you to have in this case, a 1.25 coverage ratio. And that just means that you have to recover 25% more than your annual debt cost. And so what we've done is saying, because a lot of our revenue is variable, it's not certain. If we have a cool summer or a wet fall, that impacts our ability to collect revenue. So we targeted a higher debt coverage ratio target than the minimum of 1.25. That also provides additional financial flexibility for the district, but it's no way over collecting, because those funds will go towards reserves, cash funding of capital projects, and other items. Number 6, can you provide an example differentiating between circumstances in which capital improvements are deemed operating costs versus capital costs? And I'll actually just turn that over to Brian.
That's one of the easier answers, and the answer is no, we cannot. We don't differentiate, or we don't have a situation where capital costs are split between operating versus capital. So.
Number 7 and number 8 are roughly the same, but it basically are asking, why did the water capacity fees increase for ORD while they decreased for Marina? And the reasoning for this is they're different systems. They're completely different systems, and they have different future requirements, and they've also had different depreciation on those on the existing system. So the easy answer is just saying that they're different systems, and therefore they've been adjusted differently. Number 9 is, under the buy-in methodology, how is bought capacity being quantified? Where is the engineering information that went into the buy-in calculations? In other words, have all of the improvements been assigned an existing share and a future share? As I mentioned during the methodology, what we've done is we've taken the whole system, existing and future, and divide it over customers. And customers in this case are meter equivalents. And so going back to my first question about, we took a 5/8 inch or 3/4 inch meter and that amount of capacity, that's the unit, that's the basis behind allocating new and existing usage. So it's that 3/4 inch equivalent that's the foundation for all of these capacity fees. And then the final question is, how are the existing deficiencies from prior year under collections funded in Marina and ORD? This goes back to that graphic that I showed in terms of the previous recommendations of 7.8% were not implemented. If those had been implemented, the rate increase for this year would have been less, and future years could have been less than is currently recommended. So basically those deficiencies that weren't paid for last time are now just being made up for in larger increases today. And that's all of them.
Thank you. Very thorough. Any other questions from board members? Seeing none, out to the public. Any questions by members of the public?
I was just a little surprised to hear the questions being read and answered for the board members. I thought that everybody could read. My concern here today is how can we even talk about raising utility rates or any other rates with the state that our country is in? We are not responsible for what happened with the government. We are not responsible for any economic downturn, any economic mess that we have in our communities, because we are not the decision makers. They said on television that we elect people to make decisions in order to keep us working and economically viable. Then how is it that we continue to find ourselves in this situation? Who's putting up the funds, like I said before, for these contractors, for these events that we're having when there are no funds coming into the impacted, affected community, and we're talking over 20 years. And everybody's sitting here like nothing's wrong. Maybe you haven't experienced the negative impact or the economic impact that most of us have experienced and are experiencing right now. But believe you me, it is not pretty. It is not good. I want to see people here who say that they are the ones making decisions, make some decisions that's going to help us. Don't take us for hostage. We shouldn't be taken hostage if we don't agree with your plans or whoever's making the plans that, oh, we're going to suffer economically. We're going to suffer trying to pay our bills, take care of our kids, and feed them. This is ridiculous. How come there isn't a plan for when this kind of thing happens to help people to pay these bills, to pay these growing utilities? How come there isn't a plan to help people that are in college to just exist from day to day? And families. I keep asking the same questions. I know I'm not going to get any answers, but nevertheless, I'm going to ask the questions because something needs to be
30
done
seconds.
beside all of this talking and all of this planning for years down the road, like a horse racing and a casino, or we get open space, but we get nothing that the community needs. We are not participating. You need to have somebody to show you how to do a public participation and
10
communication
seconds.
process. Well, however many seconds. If I can sit here and listen all day, somebody can listen to me.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
For all the years that I sat on the FORA board and looked at the Marina Coast Water District reports, one thing I was looking for today that I didn't see was what they normally call the W4. It's the annual consumption rate that disperses the 6,600 gallons throughout the communities. Are you going to have that next month, number one? Number two, for those of you who have heard me before, if I was a customer, I would want to know how many gallons there are in one HCF. You always talk about HCF. I know that in Seaside, one unit happens to be 750 gallons. So if I was getting money or bill, I would want to know how many gallons were in an HCF. If I use 2 HCF, I would like to know how many gallons that would be. That's something I've been asking for the Marina Coast Water District to do for years. To explain what an HCF is. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public speakers?
Hi, thank you. I'm Chrisanne Giles with the Building Industry Association. I want to thank the chair and the board members for the opportunity to speak today. I appreciate staff taking a look at the questions that I posed and having the consultants have some answers to that. They showed you a really general calculation on how these rate fees come together, and it simplifies that the capacity charge or the fee equals the existing system that the Marina Coast Water District has, plus the future CIP and expansion and construction that they plan to do in the water district, divided by the future customers. And that's how the rates and the capacity charges are identified. And so because in the FORA CIP that you all just adopted last month identifies $21.6 million in contribution funding that starts disbursement in next year, $3,600,000 annually, that's a number that's not included in their CIP program, which is substantial. They also don't acknowledge that existing infrastructure and facilities that were given to them by the federal government had a cost of zero. And so that's part of that calculation. Those two things have a significant increase on not only the rate but the capacity charges. And so we look forward to the opportunity to dive into some of the details in those questions and that calculation. But it would be helpful for the administrative committee to get some direction from the board today that those documents be reconciled, that the CIP that you adopted and the rate study reconcile future funding. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public speakers?
Good afternoon, Denise Turley. I actually went to the water board meeting and asked this question. I haven't as yet received an answer either by email or in writing, but of course at one time it wasn't two separate systems. It was two separate systems, but at a point in time it was connected because one system didn't have enough water and there actually is a connection where water flows back and forth. So my question was, is there any way to track by some kind of meter on either side or when one system is using more water or one system is using more water or the other person's water? So I kind of question that I kind of question the premise stated earlier that they're two separate systems when they're using the same pipe. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Hofer with the Marina Community Partnership. For those of you that I haven't had the chance to introduce myself to yet, I am assuming the responsibilities that Scott Hilk had for the partnership on a go-forward basis. I appreciate the opportunity to address the FORA board this afternoon on this issue. I want to just stress the importance of a careful analysis of this issue for the partnership and for future development on the base. We have a number of things, as many of you know, that we've been trying to advance on the project. And I'll share with you a conversation just had today with somebody who's actually been looking at the hotel site, one of our hotel sites for a while, where this issue specifically was raised. And 300% increase in the capacity charge kills development. No other way of saying it. And for MCWD to stand up in front of the board and present a 300% increase in one line item really raises a lot of questions for me, and I'm not going to go through all those today, but I would just ask that the board allow us some time to get through those questions. Perhaps what Chrisanne mentioned earlier in terms of reconciling the CIP to their capacity study be really something that at the admin level we look into in a lot of detail. And then generally 2 points. The first is that what I heard today was that there was no consideration for water conservation, that their model considers throughput at the meter and capacity and system cost allocation is based on that. And so from a new ratepayer's perspective, I've paid, if I'm a home buyer or I'm a business, I've paid for more expensive fixtures, more expensive construction, more expensive landscaping than existing ratepayers, yet I'm getting no consideration for that in terms of my costs through MCWD. There seems to be an inequity there. The second issue that I wanted to bring up has to do with the future system replacement issue that was brought up here. And a question I have is whether or not the model they're running is a static model or a dynamic model, and there's a lot of details associated with that. But it's possible the explanation was just oversimplified, but I just haven't had time to look at this. I think what they said is we're looking at replacement of the system
20
out
seconds.
into the future. In reality, in a system like this, that replacement happens over an extended amount of time as people are using it. And it's not necessarily right to say
10 seconds.
as a new ratepayer, I'm going to pay for all of that future replacement when I connect today. So thanks for your attention, and I look forward to working with MCWD and the admin staff on this issue.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public?
Excuse me. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jim Fletcher. I'm with UCP East Garrison. We're the master developers of the East Garrison project, and we're talking about something very near and dear to us, as it is to everybody in our community. We're out there building homes now. By my math, we have pulled 41 building permits to date this fiscal year, meaning we've paid 41 FORA fees. and obviously 41 sewer and water capacity fees. And I'm not an accountant and I'm not an engineer, but I can tell you, in this environment, as we're trying to build new homes and redevelop this overall fort, these kinds of massive increases are really hurtful. In essence, this 300% or tripling of the capacity charges, if they indeed go through, if you assume an average, that's $15,000 more per unit than it currently costs. For a $500,000 home, that's a 3% hit to margin. And you all might think that we operate on really huge margins, but I can tell you it's a tough business, and 3% is significant. I understand why Don says that's enough to kill a deal. Two things that I really don't understand in the analysis and in going through the report. We're talking about this replacement cost new, less depreciation. As I understand it, this is a sewer and water system that was given for free to the Marina Coast Water District. And that's a significant part of the equation here. So we're going to pay for that. They got it for free, and now we're going to pay them for it. That doesn't work in my world very often. So that doesn't make sense to me. And maybe there's a really good answer. Somebody will have to explain it to me. Second of all, as Chrysanda said, the FORA fee that I've already paid for 41 times does contain a portion of that $46 million that's been allocated within the FORA CIP budget to pay to Marina Coast Water District. And we really have to bring that math into play. That revenue source needs to be factored into the thinking here, or it needs to be removed from the FORA CIP cost one way or the other. If it's not, we're double dipping. So anyways, these are some of the concerns I have. I appreciate a good, thoughtful approach to assessing all of this. We'll look forward to the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Malika Velasquez. I'd like to thank you for letting me speak today. Growing up here in Monterey County, let's say for the last 30 years, there seems to have been a lot of increases, and I'm just not understanding how that keeps happening, especially now with the reuse of the fort. I am the daughter of two elderly parents, and their Social Security and paychecks are not increasing, but the utilities keep increasing. I also have friends that are in college that are also single mothers like myself, and they're also having to deal with that. And I don't see how the community is being ignored. I understand Mrs. Evangelist Yvonne Stone's passion, because these rates keep increasing, but our cost of living is increasing, but our incomes are not increasing, and it seems like that's being ignored. And like the gentleman said just now, with Marina inheriting this system for free, it doesn't make sense to me either why they would be able to then charge for it. Also, another thing I'd like to get on the record, just because of the fact that I have two parents that one was a federal employee and one is currently one, is another thing that hopefully, I don't know if the public's aware of, but there has been a proposal to Congress, something called the Congressional Reform Act 2013, where basically it says that anytime something like this happens in regards to the federal shutdown that's affecting pretty much most of the residents here in Monterey County, that basically Congress has to pretty much go through what we go through. Basically that they only collect a salary while they're in office. They have to participate in the same health system as we do. And I know it's a little bit off subject, but I do want to get this on the record. And that, where did it go here? That basically when it comes to something like this, to where our deficit goes above 3% of GDP, that all sitting members of Congress are no longer eligible for re-election. So if you guys would like to find more information out about this, it is on Google, and it's called the Congressional Reform Act 2013. And there's actually more points than what I read, but I did want to get that out on the record, and hopefully the public can hear me to look at that, because that is something that we should consider doing, considering the situation we're in now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board? Okay, saying none, public comment period's closed. Couple things. The admin committee will be meeting this next Wednesday. A lot of the more esoteric issues that were brought up by the public, and there's some really excellent comments I thought made by the public, will be addressed by the admin committee. So I'm sure the admin committee will be going for a long time and discussing a lot of things. The W4 annual consumption rate, number of gallons in the HCF, that will be brought back before next month, also discussed probably at the admin committee. Michael, some of the other issues there?
Yeah, I think mostly we heard great concern about the 300% increase and considerable amount about how we apply the $26 million component that's included in the base reuse plan. Included in our capital improvement program is funded by developer fees and how that applies. So we can make sure that when we bring that back to the board, we can answer all those questions.
Okay, coming back to the board. Any other questions by members of the board? Yes, yeah.
A few comments to put on the record. I'm glad you guys hit up on the gallons in HCF. And one of my concerns is, again, is the Seaside citizens, the residents that live in Seaside Highlands, are not able to vote on the board for Marina Coast. So we need to look at that again before we go forward. But we need to, I think the FORA board, and I'm going to make sure my admin people for the admin for the FORA understands that Marina Coast did get the infrastructure for free for a reason. It was given to them because going forward, they're supposed to provide water for infrastructure on the former Fort Ord. You know, I don't see that coming forward. And so I'm going to end my comment by saying I think developers and cities and the county that have an interest on Fort Ord need to take a closer look at exactly what's going on with Marina Coast. Because to me, it seems like it's an opportunity to slow down development, to slow down the building out of Fort Ord. You know, there's no reason to try to increase this 300%, and on top of that, they want FORA in the end to pay our part of the CIP, but we don't see no growth going on. We don't see nothing going forward other than to giving growth a hard time. So I would like the admin committee to look at that and figure out what is FORA's position as opposed to worrying about the Marina Coast. So I just throw my comments on the record for that.
Make it happen. Yes. Gail?
I would just add, since Mr. Oglesby has raised that Seaside Highlands has no vote on the elected officials in the Marina Coast Water District, neither do those in Preston Park and Abrams Park within the city of Marina. And that is why the function of the FORA board is so critical, that we are looking at this, that we give this due weight consideration, is that we are the only elected representatives and board that are able to speak for those individuals and represent their interest in analyzing the rates and the actions of the Marina Coast Water District. That is not to say anything about the character of those elected officials or how the board or the operations of the facility, but we do represent the residents. So thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Any other comments by board members? Yes, Tom?
Yes, would like to remind the board of a couple of things. This goes back a little bit in history. When Marina Coast became the provider of service on the Ord community, this board, and many of you were not sitting members of this board at the time, was pretty optimistic about what was going on or going to go on in terms of growth. And so one thing we were asked to do was not have any capacity charges at all. So for example, all of the homes that were built in Seaside Highlands paid $0 in capacity charges. They paid nothing to become part of the system. We were told to expect growth like this. What we saw was pretty much flatlined growth. It was that growth that was going to pay for the costs that we were going to experience. Yes, the Army did give us the system without charging us for it. Kind of like saying, we'll give you that rusted out 1953 Edsel in the backyard for free. We have had to make a lot of investment in that system to bring it up to standards. You may recall that the Army wasn't particularly interested in doing much in the way of maintenance of anything on the former Fort Ord starting around 1994 for quite a few years. So we may have gotten a system for free, but plans put in place, approved by FORA and various land use jurisdictions, had required changes to that system, and unfortunately in some cases they were very expensive changes. For instance, the East Garrison project is a substantial increase in the number of dwelling units compared to what was out there for many, many years. If we took the free Army system that then served East Garrison when we got it and simply left it in place and said to East Garrison, well, live off of this, they would have a development probably less than half the size of their current entitlement. So I would like to remind folks that while it makes a nice soundbite to say we got it for free, we do have to look at the very real costs that have been put into the ground to provide you all with a functional, safe system for providing potable water and taking away the pesky wastewater. So, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Walt, you had a comment, please. Oh, nothing? Okay. Any other comment by members of the board? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to receive the report. Okay, Supervisor Potter was the motion maker, and Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby was the second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have the Alliance Management Performance Evaluation. Mr. Robert Norris will give the presentation.
Good afternoon, members of the board. In performing the Alliance Management Performance Evaluation, had to go back and look at the history of the project. The development initially constructed in 1989. It was obtained by FORA through the lease in preparation and furtherance of conveyance. This led to a number of different arrangements for property management. We ended up with the City of Marina and a three-party management agreement that over 5 years evolved into a decision by this board to go it alone and have basically a two-party agreement between FORA as the owner and Alliance Management. And over the past, let's say, 16 months, we've been looking at the operations of the Alliance in a contract that was amended and signed in 2012 and again this year in 2013, covering the operations of essentially 5 different areas. We wanted to see if the operation of the property was properly accounted for and reported to FORA as the owner, if the property income is properly accounted for and passed on in a timely manner, and that disbursements are proper and paid appropriately, and the property is adequately safeguarded. Now, this is sort of important if you've ever done property management. The key is you have a community, and in that community of people, you have sort of a temperature of what's going on. Our relationship with Alliance is governed by the contract, which is attachment A to the report, and that contract calls out for their performance in a number of key areas. To look at those key areas, I went back to look at industry-wide, how is Alliance rated across the spectrum of property management companies in the nation? And they're listed among the top 10. They have some of the best practices, attributes that you want to have in a property management company. They are an accredited management organization through the Institute of Real Estate Management, or IREM, and their staff and associates have the credentialing that represent that certification. So that's sort of a checklist to say that, you know, not only do they have the profile, but among their peers, they were very highly rated. In addition, the staff that we have on site possess these credentials. this is also called for in the contract. And so that was sort of another checklist. I have a very extensive report that represents my work plan in performing this evaluation, and it goes all the way up to doing the financial audit. As a management analyst, I'm not really qualified to be the financial analyst, but I can document the presence of records. And as you can see in attachment C, there are 15 key areas in the operations of Preston Park that are reported on and documented on a monthly basis. And that includes the summary of management activities, complaints, incidents, maintenance activities, planned and unanticipated expenditures, following with the bank reconciliations. If you've ever been involved in owning anything, you want to track that expense down to its incident and to have the checks and balances there that you can derive the comfort. Going back up to sort of the 10,000-foot view, we have been receiving verification that the property is virtually 98% occupied. We're seeing the verification that in the almost 7 years that Alliance has been involved, well, 6 or 7 years that Alliance has been managing the property, there's only been 6 evictions. And I take comfort for that from the perspective of an owner's representative, in that although those sort of terse and some people would say nasty 3-day quit the premises notices are required to be delivered by law, they've worked out arrangements as people bring them up so that you don't see a lot of quote-unquote people being forced to flee a property that represents a very substantial part of the quality of lives of the people in the community. So that's just sort of an analyst's view for taking the temperature of the operations of that community as the owner's representative. The other thing that I will point to was that I then reduced all of these reviews and site visits down to the table that you see in the report. And that table has the tasks that were spelled out in Exhibit A, which are the scope of duties of the contract, a rating for that task, comments, and any follow-up needed. I called my rating system basically satisfactory, because until the financial audit comes in, and this is the first year that FORA will be using the FORA auditor to go over the financial records. When that audit comes in, and if that verifies what I've seen from the management level, I think that'll be the confirmation of the rating system that I've put in front of you today. There are 3 areas that I have identified as needs improvement. While overall Alliance has performed in a satisfactory manner, the 3 areas in the task on the analyzing financial requirements for operations and preparing the budget, we note that the audit did not occur last year, and that is the intent. That was during the transition from the 3-party agreement to the current 2-party agreement, and the interest that FORA has as the owner in having the FORA auditor go over the records. That's taking place now. And so before the end of November, we will have the results of the financial audit. The other area is that while the overall reporting of the tenant roll information, we'd like to have it aggregated on a quarterly basis. This is done on a monthly basis. Ivana says it would be very easy for them as the report provider to aggregate it on a quarterly basis so that we can do our jobs a lot better. However, it does track. The monthly information ties to a quarterly report, but we're able to do that. In the contract that we took whole cloth with very few amendments, we still left language that said prepare a tenant handbook. In practice, that tenant handbook had been superseded by a grievance policy that's been attached to each contract that deals with rights and responsibilities and how to bring complaints or resolve issues. And I take you back to the fact that overall, and this has been confirmed with my communications with Marina PD, we have a group of mostly satisfied tenants, but we have an aging property that has to have some substantial capital improvements that have been approved and budgeted and are being in the process of carried out. But overall, people have been very static in their residency and have been able to enjoy the benefits of a property that is being rented at voluntarily as your owner's decision at roughly 15% below market for the area. So overall, we look at the financial distribution to the city of Marina and to FORA, and they've done all of this and still deliver about $1.5 million to each of the parties each year, maintain 98% occupancy, and reflect some very high standards of operation and as your representatives for the day-to-day operation of the property. So in conclusion, the summary rating is satisfactory with those areas of improvement noted. And I do have representatives here from Alliance to respond to any specific questions that you have regarding their property and operations.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions by board members? Saying none, out to the public. Any questions by members of the public?
Thank you, Robert. So I'm going to respond first directly to a couple of his comments. He said that there were 15 things that they were looking at to check out to see if Preston Park. Well, if you go into the document, the attachment A, and you count, there's actually 16. And the 16th is communications with the Preston Park Tenants Association. Since the Preston Park Tenants Association did not see this document yet yesterday, was not asked to give any comment whatsoever about how they feel about this information, this is my reason to be here. So we are headed soon into the season that Ms. Pillow and I refer to as budget hell. Budget hell starts in November, and budget hell last year went till almost June, although by contract it was supposed to be over in May. I'm begging the FORA board to make part of their resolution that Alliance send their budget up the chain to some kind of auditor or accountant that will proof their budget for errors. No one pair of eyes can catch every error. Number two, I'm unsure about this. He said something superseded something else. Anyway, the grievance policy we wrote because there wasn't one, and we've asked for years since inception, and I think we're in our 16th year this year, and never have seen a tenant's manual. Still have those two questions. He answered my question about the audit. Thank you. Let's see. I'd like to spend the rest of my time on an issue near and dear to me. I was very unhappy the last time I brought this up to this board. I was
30 seconds.
Please don't shout at me. I know I'm almost done. This is a health and safety issue, and I hope that if I go 5 seconds over, you won't yell at me. Please don't interrupt me. We have not had street lights on the corner of Preston Drive and Barth Court for 7 months.
10 seconds.
We ask that you, every single board member, call PG&E and find out what is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yvonne Stone, Executive Director of the FORA Environmental Justice Network. I lived in Preston Park. Alliance was not the management company first in Preston Park, but by the time 2010, Alliance had taken over. And the personnel who was there, who was responsible for some very, very not good associations with the tenants and the property are still there, as far as I know. Now, as far as I know, they're still there. 2010, we were paying $1,400 some for rent to live in Preston Park without carpeting being changed, just all kinds of things that were wrong that haven't been righted. It has not been righted. Now, the people who are there right now, you may have some new directions for them to go in and some new instructions, that's fine. But there are some things that need to be addressed concerning Preston Park. FORA did not always own Preston Park. I'm told now that FORA owns Preston Park. But they have not always owned Preston Park. And I lived there, and to just skip over all of the things that happened in Preston Park and now give them a clean slate, I don't think it's right at all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment? Robert, would you like to respond to some of the questions that were asked?
I think in the budget process that Denise referred to, yes, we have a very interactive period and we don't always agree, but there is a significant participation in the budget. On the health and safety issue, on the street lights, it turns out that Denise's request for board involvement, it turns out that it turns on PG&E. We cannot control when PG&E rolls out on solving this issue. We've brought it to their attention. We've even offered to take on the costs, as we have done in other areas that involve PG&E, and have them reimburse us for the costs, because we wanted to address that as a health and safety issue. But we can't move past certain types of repairs at Landom that I think Landom and where's the yes, but we're aware of it. We're trying to move on it. On the grievance policy and the tenants manual, I think I've already identified that those are areas that need to be improved, and we'll either decide to do a manual or remove that requirement from the contract in the going forward period. As far as unpleasant staff interactions, I think, as we've previously noted with the board, if anything that we are not become aware of, if it's brought to my attention or to Alliance attention as far as what I've been aware of, we've responded to it. If there is an additional incident, item of behavior, we're prepared to deal with it. And I'll talk with Denise and get some specifics if that is what's going to be needed to resolve her issue.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments by board members? Ian, we'll start with you. Oh, I'm sorry, Jane, did you want to? Ladies first.
Great, thanks. I actually, one of the items in the matrix I had a question about, and that is on the first page of your table, maintain community standards of physical and social environment while keeping within budget, and it's marked as satisfactory. And then the comment is, Alliance Commission Kingsley report on quality of residential experience that needs to be monitored. And I was wondering, is it the report that needs to be monitored? And maybe you could just talk a little bit about what that might mean.
Yes, I was probably could have written it a little better. What has happened is that Alliance commissioned the Kingsley people to do a portfolio-wide survey for the quality of life within not just Preston Park, but all of their properties. And the response level, in my opinion, was low, but it needs to be monitored because more people don't have email. They don't. This is in the junk mail. So I didn't put a lot of weight on it, but I think that they deserve some recognition for the fact that they had some outside of their current property site staff, people come in to take the temperature and to provide sort of confidential means for people to comment on their experience in the property.
Ian.
I was thinking about that myself too. I was looking for the report. So, but is it there? I don't think
I'm sorry. Because it was a large report in the front page, it was part of those attachments that are available online in a complete manner.
Oh, okay.
So
okay,
I put the entire report available online at the hyperlink.
Okay, fantastic. And then my second point, I think you always know that one of my pet peeves is that tenant's manual. And you covered it by saying, well, it may be superseded by a grievance process attached to the contract. So I would think it's more things in the manual than you would attach to a grievance process and the contract. So that's what I'm getting to. I mean, I don't see us getting away from the manual or taking out the contract or the requirement just because we haven't been able to come up with one. Either I think there should be a need for some type of manual telling the tenants how, it has to be something else. It just didn't come out the blue that a manual requirement was there for the get-go. So before you come forward, staff come forward saying, let's get rid of it out of the contract, I need a lot more than just we were not able to come up with one.
And Ian, and I want to be clear, what my statement is, the decision has to be made whether that was a real requirement or it has been superseded by their reliance on the grievance process. What I'm hearing from you and other members of the board is that the handbook is something that we want to see, and so that will remain a requirement.
Yeah, I think the handbook is just you can make it as pretty as you want, within the budget, but it's just some pages saying when to pick up the trash, cut your grass, or things like that. Not the grievance process, not the contract. It's just it may only be 1 or 2 pages. I don't know, but it's a tenant's manual. It's not how to. It's not about paying your rent on time or grieving some other serious issue.
Heard and understood.
Other questions by board members? Saying none, I'd entertain a motion, please. Supervisor Potter made the motion, and Mayor Gunter the second. Okay, the motion is basically to accept the management performance report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed? No. Okay, 2 noes. Council Member Morton and Mayor Pro Tem Frank O'Connell. Oh. So we will have a second vote next month. Okay, next. 8C, it was planned to be a consistency determination with regard to the 2010 Monterey County General Plan. Since this was put on the agenda, we received detailed comments from the Sierra Club and Ms. Jane Haynes. The The FORA Administrative Committee has not had an opportunity to review the detailed comments. There was a lot of work and thought put in those comments. Also, our attorney, one of our attorneys, legal counsel Alan Waltner, has not had a chance to review the comments were made by the Sierra Club and Ms. Jane Haynes. The Sierra Club has been a great partner with regard to the stewardship of Fort Ord. And what I'd like to do, if the board would entertain a motion of delaying our consideration of this item until next month. I'd really like to get the admin committee, that's their job, they're the technical experts, to take a look at all the comments, look at the plan as presented to the board, flesh everything out, let the individuals talk with the admin committee in detail, hopefully come up with the meeting of the minds and bring it before the board next month, so it's a little bit more thoroughly thought out with both sides, with everybody, showing their cards, so to speak. So, if that would be the pleasure of the board, I would appreciate it.
So moved.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Selfridge is the primary maker, and Councilmember Edwards is the second. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, Jane.
I wanted to just bring up that for people who aren't familiar with the county's fabulous general plan, it would be hard to know whether it's consistent or not because it wasn't included. So might want to think about that. The other thing that I picked up from the comments, it seems that what has happened is that the county inadvertently, in preparing the Fort Ord Master Plan, used the draft EIR rather than the final EIR. So I wonder if we shouldn't just send it back to the county to relook at things if they were to use the final EIR before they come forward again.
I would think that would be up to the county one way or the other.
And it may be that as we come back next time, that's, we reach that determination, together. But just in my reading, it just looks as though, and they brought some of the same issues to the county, so I've had a chance to kind of look at it a couple of times, that some of the complaints about how the language doesn't match appears to suggest that the draft EIR was used rather than the final. So, and that becomes then a larger problem.
Okay,
Yes,
yes,
my
okay.
comment would echo what Supervisor Parker has said. It's surprising to me as a FORA board member when I get a packet that has, for example, 35 pages dedicated for me to understand whether Alliance has done their job well for one piece of property on former Fort Ord. But a plan that may be 10 pages, 1,000 pages, I don't know what the county plan is, that as a FORA board we're to make an independent decision under Chapter 8 whether it's consistent with the base reuse plan, and we get a 3-page summary without the report. There are 4 letters referenced in the letter from the county indicating during public comment, 4 letters, 3 from attorneys that have represented land use issues in litigation that's currently pending with FORA or has pended in the past with the Sierra Club, a letter from the Sierra Club, all in these public comments indicating there is some inconsistency which is not addressed in our staff report, nor is there any analysis of how FORA has looked at this, if anybody has done an analysis. It's simply a recommendation saying, please determine it's consistent. Why do we exist? If you're not going to ask us to look at a jurisdiction's general plan and go through that analysis to determine independently whether it's consistent with the base reuse plan, we should have all gone home in 2014 and discontinued FORA. Give us the information, have us do our job. If we need instruction from our council on what we're looking at to determine if it's consistent, please give us that. But this is not a competent way to make that decision with what's presented to us.
The comments have been noted and will be provided to the admin committee. So if we decide to vote that way next month, I think you will see a marked improvement in what you're looking for. Ian, did you have something to say?
I thought the motion was on to carry this over to the next meeting, but
Yes.
to speak on the issue, to me it seems like I don't know who made this agreement with the Sierra Club years ago, but now you can see nothing goes forward unless they think it's consistent with what they consider to be good. Every time we turn around, we come up with the same issues. You can't go forward unless the Sierra Club signs off on it. And if that's the way the reading of the, Section 8 is, then that's the reading of Section 8. But eventually, we need to move past this. We need to move past this. We can't stop at every turn. You know, I think the county sent us this document. The county voted, said they're ready to go. They feel it's consistent. We take a look at it, and then we should feel. If someone has a disagreement, send the letters forward, and I think we'll look at it next month to do that.
Okay, we've already, any other members on this side? Comment? Gail, if you have one
I
more.
do want to just add one comment in response to Mr. Ogilvy. The problem is, we all read in the newspaper that the Board of Supervisors had a 3-2 split on whether it was consistent. Why? I can't answer that. What was the analysis? What am I to look at? That 3-2 split is a second red flag that we should all be aware of as FORA board members and making this independent decision. Thank you.
Okay, we're getting a little bit off subject, but very quickly, Jane, if you would.
Yeah, I just, part of the confusion is that the aspects of the base reuse plan haven't been updated to reflect actions that have been taken over time. And I guess I have sort of a question and a request. When can we expect that the land swap agreement between East Garrison and the Eucalyptus Road Parker Flats planning area, that those things like MPC and the habitat area, the veteran cemetery, all get laid out so that we don't have this sort of ongoing confusion about what is or is not the current base reuse plan.
Jane, the motion is about delaying this until next month, but I mean, good question. The staff can get with you on that specifically and answer your question.
Great.
Afterwards.
Yeah, I'd just love to know kind of what the timeline is for when we can.
Okay, let's go out to the public. Any member of the public have any comment with regard to delaying this issue for 1 month? Seeing none. Okay, back to the board. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you very much. Unanimous. I appreciate it. It will be brought back in a much more complete form next month, I guarantee you that. And the admin committee, there should be a very interesting admin committee this next Wednesday. If you're looking for some fireworks to show up, it should be very, very interesting. Okay, old business, a contract for legal services for Mr. Jerry Bowden. This is a second vote. We've already had public comment last month. We've already had board discussions last month. This is purely a perfunctory second vote, as is our custom here. The motion before the board is to authorize the executive officer to execute an on-call contract for legal services with Jerry Bowden through fiscal year 2013-14, not to exceed $5,000. That's the motion on the floor. I'm sorry, $50,000. Inflation is hitting us even as we speak. Okay, that's the motion. Do I have a second for the motion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay, we have Council Member Morton and Mayor Pro Tem Frank O'Connell. I'm sorry, and Supervisor Parker and Council Member Selfridge. Okay, 4 against. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Next, we have the Environmental Services Cooperative Agreement ESC update. Mr. Stan Cook will present the presentation.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Stan Cook. Of course, I'm the Program Manager for your Environmental Services Cooperative Agreement, which is the agreement where the Army provided funds for FORA to take on the cleanup of munitions and explosives of concern on 3,340 acres of the former Fort Ord. I provided a written report for you, and I will not go over all of that. I do want to draw your attention to page 120, and I wanted to point out that FORA has received written confirmation from regulatory agencies that Circle Mech remediation work is complete on portions of the ESCA properties known as County North and Parker Flats Phase 1. Those properties were transferred to the County of Monterey, the County North property, County of Monterey portion of Parker Flats, and Monterey Peninsula College portion of Parker Flats. FORA staff is currently working with the county staff to adjust the signage based on a signage plan that is under the joint direction of county staff, Monterey County Sheriff's Department, and the Bureau of Land Management. The relocation of the ESCA signage will be coordinated with the county's installation of their new signage. We don't want to leave the area without signage. We want to be able to coordinate the county putting in their new signage and the ESCA team moving their signage. Okay. One of the key things that we have accomplished, see if I can get this to move, is that the ESCA team has finished all of the known munitions and explosive of concern field work. The data that we collected on the items we have removed and the way we've done it has been given to the regulators or is being processed to be given to the regulators. They may request future investigations. So we've finished the known field work, but the regulators may ask us to go back if they have questions in certain areas. We're entering a very lengthy document review process on these last areas that we have finished the field work in. It's a minimum of 160 days of public review for each of those documents. I mean, for the documents for each portion of the ESCA. Also, the U.S. government, as we know, has had shutdowns or delays. We've been able to meet with some of our colleagues in EPA because of this. There may be a synergy between all of these things that, there may be a synergy between these three items that are I've listed as challenges up here. So I'll keep you informed on these as we go along. Okay. What I do want to show you is something that's not government dependent. It's our interaction ranges habitat restoration. In January of this year, we replaced the soil in there after removing the munitions and explosives concern. There were some 3,000 items of predominantly 40 millimeter grenades that we pulled out of there. February, you can see where we replanted replanted seedlings and added a watering system. That has been very successful. You can see in September of 2013, we've got very good coverage of the area. We've found quite a few endangered species that have come up from the seed bank and the soil that we saved, and topsoil we saved and put back in place. So that I showed this to you in June, and it looked very good, but September it looks even better. So I'll keep updating the board on this. Next, I wanted to remind people that there are many ways to find out about the ESCA and keep up on the ESCA's progress. We have our website specifically for the ESCA. It can be linked. You can go to the FORA website. There's a link that will take you to this website. It contains newsletters and technical fact sheets. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. Laura keeps that up. We have the hotline if you're out there in the public. I mean, if you're in the public and you want to go out into the field and are concerned about areas that may be accessible or not, you can call the hotline and we'll give you an update on those areas. So that's concludes my presentation. Thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing, Chair, and that is during the course of the last week, we had a number of questions regarding the Veterans Cemetery and how that fits in with all of this. That 160 days that you saw before has already been undertaken with respect to the Veterans Cemetery. That process was moved early. The decision by this board to move forward with the ESCA contract allowed the flexibility to move the cemetery up in the process, do the removal work early, and then get certification from the individual regulatory agencies that property was ready for the cemetery use. And so the work is all completed. The 160 days has run. All of that has been completed, and that property is ready for transfer. So I just wanted to remind the board members who asked, that's the status for the cemetery as relates to the ESCA.
Thank you, Michael. And also, Stan Cook's been doing a great job. In fact, basically on the 1st of this month, he picked me up at my house at 5:45. We had to drive all the way to Sacramento and meet with the Department of Toxic Substance Control, and Christy Reimer was there. We had a briefing that lasted 80 slides, no lunch. We had one cup of coffee when we left, and got back 11 hours later with no food, no nothing. But it was a very informational meeting. I think we really have to reevaluate the reimbursement policy of FORA when we go for 11 hours with just a cup of coffee. But that's another story. Stan, you did a good job. I appreciate it. Even though you fly low under the radar in that BMW of yours. So it was basically DTSC was looking at coordinating how they clear land with what we're doing, looking at the various procedures and seeing if there's some common. And it looks like what we're doing is a great job here, and Christy is doing it. She does a great job too. Okay, any questions by members of the board? Out to the public? Any questions by members of the public?
My concern is that, Levon Stone, Photo and Environmental Justice, is that the ESCA program is part of the cleanup of Fort Ord, and they have documents. Stan just stated that there are 2 or 3 very important documents coming out. Our organization was one of the ones representing the public with comments on these documents, which includes the hiring of a technical advisor, because these documents are engineering documents, and we need to put them in a form that the public can understand. I'm just wondering at this time, especially when the EPA is not in session because of the closure or whatever is happening, how this is going to happen, if it's going to proceed without they're regulating the process. And from one of the documents that I saw, there needs to be some other process that may impede the public's health. So I'm just wondering how that's going to proceed.
Any other questions?
On the inquiry about the process that we use for completing the full regulatory review of this, I want to remind the board members that this is part of an administrative order on consent and a contract we have with the United States Army under the Environmental Services Cooperative Agreement to complete the work of the technical specifications and review statement. The contract we have with the team of Arcadis and Weston and Westcliff engineers does the actual field work and a lot of the preparation of the documents. Every single element of the work that's done under the Environmental Services Cooperative Agreement is overseen by the United States Army, reviewed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the California Department of Toxic Substances Control for their sign-off authority. So each and every piece of what we do requires the regulatory sign-off before we are then enabled to transfer the underlying property to the jurisdiction.
They'll be there eventually. They'll get back. Yeah, go ahead.
It is very much a concern of ours that EPA is not available. There will be some effects on our ability to meet certain time frames under the review process if they're not there to do the sign-off, to make the comments, and to make that happen. Ms. Stone's comments and questions are valid. All of us, I know, are concerned about the federal government coming back to work. In the case of just a few weeks' delay from the Environmental Protection Agency, because attorneys are not considered to be essential personnel. Sorry, John. But attorneys are not considered essential personnel. And as the consequence, the reviews are stopped. They're basically held. For them to get back up to speed when they come back to work doesn't mean a 2-week delay. It could mean as much as a 6-week or a 2-month delay. And so we are very concerned about that, because on the ground it'll affect when we are able to transfer property to the cities of Seaside and to the county of Monterey.
Okay, back to the board. Any final questions with regard to the presentation? If not, entertain a motion to receive the report, please. Okay, Supervisor Parker, motion maker, and Councilwoman Gail Morton, second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we're getting near the end of the agenda here. Next is the public comment period. Any member of the public wish to address the board on any item not on the agenda may do so now. You've got 3 minutes. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the board?
Hello, Sid Williams, resident Marina, local veteran, local pest. I'm just here because last Friday, all of you couldn't be here. And I wanted to take a moment to address as many board members as possible to say thank you to the FORA board for all their efforts on behalf of the Veteran Cemetery. It's been a long and torturous process to get where we are today. We have a ginormous first step taken, but I must caution that you haven't seen the end of me, because this is phase 1, and we will be back. But for right now, thank you very much.
MacArthur also said that, didn't he? So we'll be back. Again, thanks for all your efforts. Next speaker, please.
Margaret Davis. I just wanted to say Measure M supports the Veterans Cemetery, and proponents of Measure M thank the FORA board for your willingness to incur a loan to enable the Veterans Cemetery to go forward. We're confident that the strong way in which you have taken responsibility, along with communications from FORA and all the jurisdictions in support of the cemetery, sent a strong message and were decisive in Governor Brown signing Senate Bill 232 yesterday, appropriating $1 million for the cemetery. Measure M and K differ in their intended uses of nearby public land, but both measures, M and K, are united in support of the Veterans Cemetery and its importance to our community. Measure M congratulates the FORA board and Senator Monning, Carmel Mayor Jason Burnett, and Jimmy Panetta for your creativity, hard work, and a successful outcome. For our cemetery and open space, I hope you'll vote yes on Measure M. I want to put on another hat and invite you all to 4th Annual Veterans Day celebration, sponsored by Friends of the Forward Warhorse, co-sponsored by City of Marina, November 9th from 10 to 11 at the Marine Equestrian Center. There will be the Flash Museum and a history talk, and a very special occasion, the 90th birthday of Sergeant Alan McDonald will be celebrated. We'll be dedicating a trailside bench at Comanche's grave in his honor, and it would be great to have a very robust turnout to wish Sergeant McDonald well for turning 90. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board?
Again, Levon Stone, Photo and Environmental Justice. When it comes to salaries of our elected officials, I know that all of you know that all of the United States presidents for life receive over $400,000 every year, and that our House and Senate members receive $175,000 for life even when they're no longer in office, and that our speakers of the House receive $225,000 for life even if they're not in office, and the salary of the majority minority leaders almost $200,000 for life, and not counting the expense accounts, not counting the parties and the dinners and all of that. What we need here is we need help for the people who live here. We need help that even for all these people that are representing us, we need some funds. We need some money. We don't need talking. We don't need pet projects. We need people to bring money into our communities and jobs and affordable housing, and that those housing out there in East Garrison is not representing the community. Nobody that I know is able to get into the housing that is supposed to be affordable. We need some help. We need it now. We don't need it next week. We don't need it tomorrow. We need it now. So somebody, I'm sure, has some kind of connections not only to Washington, D.C., but the connections need to be made right here with the people that you see every day. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment? Seeing none, public comment period is closed. Next, we have the executive officer's report.
Yes, Chair Edel and members of the board, I believe all of the elements of my staff executive officer's report are informational. I do have one item I wanted to highlight. Under the travel report, there's a note about the Association Defense Communities Redevelopment Summit that was in Portland, Maine. That particular event worked very well for us. City Manager Dan Dawson was able to attend. I saw Doug Yount earlier in the audience. He was also able to attend. And Christy Reimer, of course, was there as well. There were a number of panels that were presented there, and a couple of the speakers that appeared at Portland, Maine, we talked to, and we're going to try to get them here to talk to us about the kinds of positive experiences or negative that they've had in the base reuse process that would be beneficial for us as we move ahead. I also wanted to note that the FORA board meeting next month, we pointed out that the Post-Reassessment Advisory Committee is recommending the 12th and 13th for, and the month of December, excuse me, the 12th and 13th for the colloquia. That board meeting would be rescheduled to 4 p.m. in the afternoon, just to remind everybody, and it would be at the California State University Monterey Bay campus, so that there won't be a whole lot of movement back and forth to try to make that facile for all the board members. And Chair, that's all I have that I would highlight.
Thank you, Michael. Very succinct. Any items from members? Yes, Jane?
I apologize. I saw a couple of little details in a couple of these reports that I'm just going to speak to Lena about. I don't need to take people's time with it, but I'll make a couple corrections.
Thank you very much. Any other items from members? Saying none, we're adjourned. Thank you very much. Enjoy the sunshine.